I've silenced my phone.
Well, I think we might be
You
live.
got silenced your silencer.
Got to watch these two, you know.
Phil's putting flies down.
They're not. The buttons.
Yeah.
Oh. Right. 8 o'clock.
I think we're hasn't come up on my Facebook just yet, but
I've just had a message from Dylan saying it was on.
no, I can't see it yet.
I'll give you the nod. Your glasses are on your head. They're not on before. You need to put them down because you weren't like that.
No.
So stand and then move.
Oh, is Dylan saying we're on?
We're definitely live now, so off we go, Tony. Over to you.
Right. Thank you very much, Chris, and welcome everyone to another guest night. We've now done a few of these, and they've been quite successful, but we've never actually done one direct from the workshop where tonight's guest fettles his Ford Escort. So we're lucky to have a very well-known competitor in the Northwest, Phil Burton. Been competing for circa 40 years or so, well, not far off anyway, and very, very popular driver and a very competitive driver. And welcome to Phil Burton. So without further ado, it's over to you, Phil.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Kirby Motors Live. Welcome to the home of Lorna Lou.
Right,
Phil. Lads.
Well, we're honoured, Phil, that you've put a lot of effort in to get ready for this. The car's looking fabulous, so I think it might be a good idea if you just give us a quick rundown of the spec of the car at the moment. I know you've done a bit of a rebuild, so take us through it.
Yeah, the car, as a lot of people know, unfortunately, we have had a rebuild since a bit of a bad accident back in 2019. There's been some spec changes during that rebuild, but nothing too major. There's been fine things because Dylan and I had decided it was a change of direction and we were going to do a bit of tarmac. So there has been some changes, but basically the car itself, Millington engine, Quave 60G sequential gearbox, Riga suspension, and other than that, really, most of it is a traditional Group 4 Escort under there.
Right. So I guess it's an open class car, Phil. What do you think?
we're running the open. We do run in the open class, yeah.
So you've made a decision to go Millington and gearbox and the axle that can cope with that. What was the thought process when you thought, well, I want to be competitive in this class? What do I need to be competitive?
Well, yeah, when we went back to some events and found the pace had gone up, and we were trying to decide on the area of the car which we could do something, and I decided it was more suspension. So that's why we actually invested in the Riga suspension for it, to try and make the car more competitive using traction. However, by the time I bought all that, then I decided it was a good idea to put a Millington in as well. So I did it all in one. I did it all in one go. It meant we were out of the game for 2 years, but it was the best thing I've ever done for enjoyment and results that the car's had since we did all that. So
how did you come to it? Yeah, I mean, obviously there's various options for power plants, not just Millington. Lots of people run big Vauxhalls or
Tony, it was a natural progression because the engine that we had in was already a YB. The configuration of what's under there is exactly the same. So it was literally one in, one out. Yeah. There was a bit, there was some parts of it which were a bigger job compared to the other engine, but it was, as I've just said, one engine came out and the other one dropped in.
Right. So we just seem to. Right. Did you go for a brand new engine, or was it something that you got second hand, or just being rebuilt?
It was actually, which I'll lift the bonnet anyway, then they
Yeah.
can see. But this is what they call a Series 1. So this is more of a conventional Cosworth derived engine, and I got on because, as most people will know, Roy actually does the Series 2s, so people were trading Series 1s in for Series 2s.
Yeah.
So I gave him a call, and as Roy would say, I've just got just the engine for you, Phil. And my reply was, you say that to everybody.
Yeah.
But he was serious, and he actually told me it was actually Paul Swift's.
Right.
So when he told me about it, the next thing I did was ring Paul Swift and found out why. And he explained to me why he'd traded the engine in. It was only a 2.3 when Paul had it. And so therefore, I spoke to Roy saying, well, this is going on gravel. So Roy put it up to 2.4, knocked the cams back a bit to get drivability rather than horsepower, and came up with the unit we have. And it works very well on gravel, but it'll still do okay on tarmac. But it is predominantly a gravel spec engine.
Right. Is there much difference between Series 1 and Series 2? Is it marginal, or is there a distinct difference?
Massive.
Is there?
It's a bespoke complete Millington engine as a Series 2. It's all Roy's own design right across the board from top to bottom, whereas the head on this engine is off a Sierra or Escort Cosworth.
Right.
Whereas the Series 2, it's his own head, his own manifolds, everything is in-house designed to give the performance that they give. But there is an awful lot of different engine builders out there are snapping at the heels, and some may say are surpassing them, but it's each to their own, really. You know, I could think of one or two that are probably now as equally as good.
And do you use it, Phil? Because you've used it a number of years now. Is it something that you put in, you forget about it, and then you take it out at 1,000 miles or whatever it is and send it back to Millington? Is it sort of fit and forget, or is there a bit more to it than that?
No, you're right. It is. The engine I put the engine in at the end of 2014, and we ran it through 15 and 16, and then it went back to Roy and was rebuilt. And so it went back in halfway through. I'd only did one rally in 17, but we'll get to them things later. But then everything's on a mileage, or they actually use hours, not mileage. It's how many hours the engine's running.
Yeah.
And they can see that on the ECU. So everything's logged, and that way things are mileage to how long things in the engine last. They know when they've got to change things, and the reliability is down to the fact that when it goes back there, they don't analyse something and think, well, can we use that again? They think that's done 500 miles for talking sake, and they put it in bin and put a new one in. And that's the reliability factor, whereas a lot of other people would think, well, we can get away with that a bit longer, and next thing it fails. And then costs you twice as much again because, you know, it's made a big mess.
Yeah.
So even though the bill hurts, it can be the best way forward. Or if you're going to do it yourself, you've got to be strict and say, no, that's out now, regardless.
And does it come, obviously, with its own ECU? It's all mapped. You just literally have to plug it in, and in a way you go, or do you have to have it mapped on a roller?
This is, since I've had this, it's been on the dyno at Millington, and I've never had to touch it. I've been quite happy. A lot of people put them on rollers and go for the last little bit, and they do generally get, because as anybody out there knows, mapping is a dark art, and some people are better than others, and some people think they're better than others. It's not something I'm professed to be any good at, but I just the engine's never taken any harm, and it's always run well, so I've left it alone. As the old saying is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and I guess the kind of torque numbers we're talking about and the power means that you've had to upgrade the box and axle, I guess.
Well, I already had the box. That was upgraded
Right.
before. The engine was the last piece. Everything else was on top of the job. So when the engine went in, I didn't have any problems and thinking, I'm now going to have to do this. Everything else I'd worked from the back forward, if you like, because
Yeah.
the Atlas axle, that'll take whatever. Gearboxes, that's another, everybody has their own preference. I was one of the very first people to get a 60G back in 2008. And one or two people pulled a face. What have you gone and bought a Quaife for? But because it was a blank canvas that Quaife did, and it was very much new, modular, it's been a great investment and worked really well. And
Yeah.
and I basically bought the gearbox because we've been having transmission issues, and we were doing the RAC that year. We needed something that would do 4 or 5 days rallying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to be fair, it's done years and years and years because it's so over-engineered. It'll take far more power than what this gives, so it's on top of the job.
Yeah. And yeah, the reputation of them is fabulous. So,
But they were
so if we think,
they were going through a bad spell because I did have a Quaife 5-speed Type 9 in, which I had nothing but trouble with, and I was glad to see the back of, to be honest. But I took a gamble, if you like, because we were going into the unknown with this new product. But Quaife sent me the flyer, and I read it, and I looked at the shaft sizes and the figures they claimed it would stand, and the beauty of it was, for me, it was a bit like we said with the engine. The Type 9 came out, and that went in. I barely had to do any modifications. Just a new gearbox mount to make, basically. It bolted to the bell housing. Prop shaft went in. Gear lever came through, same all. Put the display in for the gear shift, and job done.
so I presume it's sort of flat shift and all that kind of stuff.
No, flat shift's my foot. I just blip it. Yeah, we keep away from the electronics on the car are as simple as they possibly can be. So, but no, we've no flat shift or nothing like no paddles. It's just pull the stick and just blip the throttle at the right time.
I mean, it's an age-old debate on the forums, isn't it? That how much is a sequential actually worth? You obviously think it's really beneficial, but is there a bit?
Where a sequential loses out is if you're in bother, because if you've come into somewhere too hot and you end up making a meal of a corner or whatever, and you're in a high gear, you've got to get it down them gears where H pattern you go straight back into first or reverse. Where we can't, we've got to come down, lift the lever through neutral into reverse, so the clock's ticking. But for actually momentum through a stage, like you can change gear mid-corner. Instead of having to blip a corner to get round it in one gear, you just pull stick halfway through the corner and click another gear in. And that makes a difference. That's my personal view anyway, where I think you can pick time up.
Yeah. Is there more time to be had though if you went sort of paddles and flat shifts, or do you think it's marginal?
I think that it's a little bit like going from right-hand drive to left-hand drive. You've got to adapt, because everything all of a sudden, to a certain degree, becomes alienated. I drive a road car with paddles. I never use them. I use them occasionally. Then I get, because you don't use them all the time. But if you're rallying, it's then, do you have one paddle? Do you have two? And which way is backing up and down or whatever? And I think it's more thought process for a long time until you get used to it. But these guys that drive maybe like world cars and R5s, but also have a Mark II as well, because they're driving them sort of cars using paddles, they find it second nature. So, but for me, I'm happy just pulling and pushing stick, to be honest. But even though I don't drive this car very often, as soon as you jump in it, it just becomes natural. You forget H pattern or what, and you just go straight into it.
Yeah. So what was the thinking behind suspension choice, Phil?
Well,
you've gone right.
That's another dark art area. It's another dark art area. Yeah, well, you've got to be able to understand what the car's doing to be able to put the settings in to get it to work. And that's, again, each driver preference. Somebody will get in this and think it's horrible. I've listened to people's settings, I've tried them and not liked them, gone back to my own way. But you've got to understand how a damper works. And it is a difficult, another dark art of how to actually get your head round suspension. And it does take time. And you've got to log it down, what you've done, write it down, the clicks, and when you've changed it. So it's either nominate somebody on a rally, it's your job, you write it all down, or for me, I just do it myself. And then I can't blame anybody else.
What did you have previously? Sort of Bill Steins, etc. The traditional kind of approach.
We ran the car when I built this car. It was just on your usual traditional Bill Steins on the front and coilover Bill Steins on the back.
Yeah.
And then just six link like anybody else's is. And then it was again to modify the upper top mount in the back of the car to get the Riger mount in. Other than that, everything bolted straight on. And then obviously mount the cans, which under the bonnet's easy, but they have to go on the axle. A lot of people now have asking Riger to put a lot longer pipe on the can, and they put a big hole that the can will go through, and they actually put the cans in the back of the car behind the seats, so they're inside, so they're out of harm's way. Because I actually have lost the can off the axle and was very lucky. It was wrapped round the brake disc and the hub of the passenger rear, and how the pipe and the can didn't snap off and put us out of the rally, I don't know, but we got away with that. And it was a cable tie makeshift and mend on the roadside to go through a stage and then into service. So they're very must have been very durable pipe, whatever Riger used.
Yeah. Now, how
But
much
again,
support do you get from Riger themselves?
the Riger support is Milton Keynes, and he is Zoltan. He's called. He is. I'm not going to say hard work, but he's Hungarian, so he takes a bit of getting used to. So you tend to find everything has to be on email, so he can translate and understand. But I have been there, and it is literally a shop. It's like going into a shop. It's not a big workshop or anything like that. He's literally going into a hairdressing salon type shop. That's all he has.
Right.
But the gear he's got in there is everything he needs to rebuild and service suspension units.
But he maybe struggles with Cumbrian accent.
Pardon?
You struggle with this. He
Well,
maybe
yeah,
struggles with a Cumbrian slang.
there is that, because when you talk to him on the phone, it sounds like he's getting all aggressive, but it's not. It's just his mannerism of being Hungarian. And that's just one of them. But he's all right to deal with. I've actually had a problem, and I've left work at 2:00, shot to Milton Keynes. He's waited for me. He's fixed it, and then back here. The next morning, put it back on the car, and we're good to go. So he's pretty good that way. Like, you're probably thinking there's another man obviously on the doorstep for us, but that's just Riger was the way I wanted to go. And I made me, and to be honest, there's a lot of thought went into whether it was going to be, using Proflex, but I just, from world level, etc., I had my heart set on the fact that it was going to have Riger on it, and that was it. That's what I did.
Yeah.
So, and that's, the suspension, engine, as I say, the brakes, the axle, and everything else is what you'd expect of an Escort.
Yeah.
The main things of the actual car is what engine and box are running and what suspension. And yes, we've got the Vauxhall power steering like most people. Colin, one of my lads in the workshop, he put all the electronic dash and things in and got rid of an awful lot of wiring a couple of years ago. He taught me into modernising that. I was still trying to be analog, but he got me into digital. So we've done all that, which I couldn't believe when we weighed the amount of wire we took out. When we weighed it all, so it's all weight distribution.
Well, I was going to ask you, have you weighed the car?
Yes, I did actually. I did. It weighs. We weighed it on we had the opportunity on a Pirelli because they were weighing all the historics. So I said, "Oh, can I put mine on? I've never weighed it," and it came in at, if memory serves me right, it wasn't full of fuel, and it was just the can. It was 1070. So but it was no spare wheel and just a little bit of fuel in it. So it isn't a heavy car. There's lighter ones out there, and I was watching a few people hovering into the 11s. Then somebody comes in at, virtually on a ton, and then there's a couple of Escorts that are at the front of the field in historics weighing at just under a ton.
Yeah, and there might be one or two of these the sort of single venue lads are probably slightly lighter, but they're not quite heavily modified, aren't they? So
Well, yeah, there is. And the thing is, see, we obviously lost a lot of weight. The Millington engine only weighs 83 kilos.
yeah,
You know, there's a big saving on the block. And, but you see, you get rid of leaf springs and then you go and put power steering on because
Yeah.
power steering's heavy. So you got to look at some ways of getting rid of weight again. So it probably weighs a little bit more now. And same as at the moment, it's got a metal bonnet on it at the moment instead of a fiberglass or carbon one. So there's a bit more
Yeah.
weight. But
are you know, some lads are very particular, length of bolts and titanium bolts. How fussy are you with it in terms
yeah,
of weight?
I don't get that carried away. But don't, you know, if there's a bolt comes through, as long as a couple of threads through, cut the rest off. You don't need it. So that goes. I'd certainly look at things like that. Material wise, I've always been one to believe strength and reliability comes before lightweight. You want it to stay together.
Yeah.
I'd rather have an extra washer or whatever just to be on the safe side.
Yeah.
In that respect.
And I guess you're running 15-inch rims.
On time, yes, but 13 on gravel.
13 on gravel. Right.
Yeah.
Have you tried 15 on gravel?
No, never tried. I built the car when the shell was built. It was built because it's all tubbed and the thing. The idea was to solely go to 15, but you talk to a lot of people on gravel, and depending on the pilot, it's a yay or a nay. Some people get on with it, and I think you've got to get the wheel offsets, everything just right to keep everything as near as damn it how it should be. End of day, Ford tried it and went off it. So, but on tarmac, the 15-inch rim is exactly the same rolling radius as a 13-inch gravel, so all your gearing stays the same. So you haven't got you're not swapping diffs for tarmac. Whereas your 13-inch historic boys have to go to 4.6 for tarmac and 5.1 for gravel. Whereas I just leave it on a 5.1 all the time.
Then it's the standard AP calipers.
Yeah, it's on radial. It's on radial APs on the front, and it's on Forest 4-pots on the back. When the car was originally built, it had Forest 4-pots all around, and the reason I did it was because if you only have to carry one spare, it will go anywhere. And then, unfortunately, somewhere in the Lake District, I left the stub axle and everything behind. It took the caliper and everything with it. So it was a lot cheaper option to go radial at the front.
Yeah. And I noticed you've got the master cylinders there in the engine bay. So is it a fairly standard kind of pedal box and stuff arrangement?
Yeah, we're just on a Gartrack bias pedal box, just like they were back in the day. I've no floor mounted or anything trick like that. It's all still where it was. Never bothered. So I've driven cars with floor mounted pedal box. Again, it's something you've got to get used to because it's a bit like driving a Beetle with pedals going the other way, and you have to get used to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it is just a case of reference to preference, and I've just never had any trouble, so I've left it alone as it is.
So I guess in summary, you're sort of saying you think unless you got a sort of phase 2 motor, it's about as far as you can go with it, really. You think
it's as far as I want to go. You know, to get to the specification I'm running to a certain degree was like I've got what I want. A long time to get it, but I've got what I wanted. And you know, to go any further now, you will be, you know, because if I wanted a Series 2 Millington, he'd have to build me a special for gravel, not what he puts in off the shelf, which are like, you know, 340 odd horsepower and God knows what. Well, as you can work out, you know, between the trees, that's a waste of time. So, you know, he would have to drop everything back and it would be a special build, which they haven't done. So it could be an experiment, but probably at a price.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's one of them where it does what it says on the tin and makes me smile, and that's how it's staying. You know, it's.
And to be fair, Phil, you had some great success with it in latter years, haven't you? Since you went.
Certainly, the last 6 years. You know, you look at the result sheets from the last 6 years. You know, they've been great. You know, and it's been a good investment. It's like anything in rallying, you put in what you get out what you put in, rather.
And ultimately, it's all these factors brought together gives you the end result. But you know, if it's engine, suspension, what do you think is the bigger influence? What have you found to be the biggest influence? Suspension.
I was always told many years ago. I once going back to my Pinto days, and that was a 2.1. I went back to Paul Gardner, and I said, I want more power. We need to make this a 2.3. And he turned around, he says, rebuild it and go and buy some new tyres. So we rebuilt it. We went over to do which used to be a cracking little single venue on Walney Island, and with some proper good tyres on it, and came away with, well, we'll get to that in a bit, but a good, a good day. And if the car handles and stops, you don't need the biggest amount of power. The power is just a bonus. But me personally, there'll be guys out there listening that have driven lower power cars and will probably appreciate if the car handles well, that helps the lack of power. I've never driven anything less than a 2 litre in all my rallying. Well, I have, but it was a twin cam.
Yeah.
So I've always been fortunate to have a bit of power under my foot. So it's with that, it always helps get you out of trouble as well. But this is so easy to drive because it'll pull from nothing. So it will actually just pull off the floor and just put another gear in. You need to rev it. See, some people can't believe our 13-inch tyres. Well, I can make them live to a degree. We have been known to put them to canvas, but only because we were just seeing how far we could get out of a set of tyres.
Yeah.
So the tyre wear isn't too astronomical for the power the engine gives. Like you did touch on, I heard you mention torque and power. Well, actually, the engine didn't come. You don't get to know. I don't know the exact. I know a rough idea, but I don't know the exact figures. It doesn't tell you.
Does it not?
No, it just says go and use it. So I can't give you an exact figure.
So if you take a typical sort of BTRDA round or historic round with opens and it's 45 stage miles, what do you need? 4 rear tyres?
Yeah, well, we did one year where we were limited to a 6 tyre rule. So you were having to swap tyres around the car on certain days. So you could end up with running rears all round. So you did have 6 rears and you were running worn tyres on the front on certain events to make sure you could rotate them around the car. So that was quite a challenge, and that made you have to drive accordingly to only having 6 tyres. But generally speaking, yeah, because unless we have punchers, you haven't got time to just keep changing on modern events. So it generally is new in the morning and new in the afternoon on the back. Front tyres, I can get 2 or 3 events out of them easily.
Yeah.
So, but you only have to get compound wrong, and your back tyres have gone. But generally speaking, we can, with the guidance we get from Pirelli, because predominantly most of us are on Pirellis. Steve Hartness is good. He knows what should be used when, and unless we want to really overrule and say, no, I'm going to use something else, then we go off his guidance.
Yeah.
Simple as.
Coming back, yeah. I mean, it's virtually universal, the Pirelli use, isn't it? So coming back to the engine, is it a single map for all conditions, or have you got a choice of maps?
No, it's just on one. We don't have a split map. Roy used to go through a process of having a switch where you could have a wet map, so you could just knock the power down on it, for obvious reasons. And that would be an option on a Series 2 for gravel. You could go back to that split, when you knock the power back on a gravel event, but you could utilise it on a tarmac event to actually have the full power. But I always think, it's been mapped twice. You're better off having it to its potential. So if you're running a Series 2, it's a tarmac engine predominantly. There's 1 or 2 guys running, but the smaller capacity. Henry Graham's got a Series 2 Millington in his, but I think it's about a 2.2. So, and that's tuned back to right back to about 250 horse. But it pulls.
Yeah.
Whereas other people have tried driving at 300 plus in the woods, and there's 1 or 2. It's down to the ability of the driver. If you can use the power and not be wild, you can run 300 brake. and not, like, well, a few of these Duratec 2.5s in the woods are giving that sort of power, and people are using them. I think I can think of like Dave Brick. He reckoned he used to have over 300 horse out of his on big wheels. If you're going that sort of power, you need to be getting on 15-inch wheels. Colin McRae did all right with his.
Yeah, he was all right, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, didn't do bad.
He was all right. Yeah, he wasn't bad at all. So, with the kind of power going through it, Phil, and you're obviously running at the front, does the shell need regular tweaks? Notwithstanding you're going off into the
since we came back after that layoff and we came back in 15, to be fair, we've been very lucky that all the championships and everything we've done since then, we have run at the front. Yeah. So the road conditions are at the best, and it's very, very rare. We've done one or two rough events. On the BTRDA year in 16, we ran, the Quinton was part of the British Championship. So all the BTRDA guys all got pushed back, like about 30 places. And oh dear, what a difference.
Yeah.
After the British Championship had been through, the ruts and that was a rough rally. But the shell has barely had the welder, it's barely split open anywhere over the years. And I've been running this car was built in and debuted in 05.
Right. So, in shell terms, it's quite old.
Yeah, but it's a good sort. It's actually it might be a 77 on the number plate, but it's actually a 76 shell that I picked up. But it's been a strong shell, good solid shell. There's been an odd crack around the back end, stress fracture cracks, but not rot. We've never. But when it was built, we had some rot in it that we cut out and put fresh panels in when it was originally built. So since then, it's we've never really we've always been on top of it that way.
Yeah, it's
which I think many people are nowadays, because they seem to shells just seem to pop up out of the woodwork. The people keep finding them, and there's some really, really talented builders out there that can bring something back from the dead. Somebody might think that shell's had it. Like my last shell before this, in modern terms now, that would have been mended.
Yeah.
It was twisted, but they would have, nowadays, there's men out there would have said, no, we'll mend that, and it would have got mended.
Yeah, you look at the work that I was looking at one today, and I think you looked at it. Alwyn, the lad down south.
Alwyn does a nice job. Yeah,
he turns out some amazing stuff, doesn't he? But incredible. But it's yours looks well, doesn't it? You
got to keep. You got to keep on top of it, and the maintenance. People don't how much effort goes in to get these cars to the start of an event. The hours and hours, us guys spending workshops at night and weekends is endless. But you've got to be endless if you want them right. You've got to be on top of it all the time. And this is what they do. People say, oh, it's only done 45 miles. Yeah, but it's no good just washing it and putting it back in the corner and then getting it out again. They've had a hard 45 miles, but they should. Then they go and do a big rally, like you do the RAC. It's obviously got to do 200 or 300 stage miles. Yeah. And just being serviced, in the lay-by.
Yeah.
They can go a lot. They can go. To be honest, between events, it's very rare. It's more peace of mind maintenance, checking things are all right, and you can generally have a car re-prepped in 2 or 3 nights. But being a bit anal, you take things to bits and have a look just to be on the safe side. So you are right.
Yeah. What does that? What does that usually consist of? So is it just fluids? Have a look at the clutch?
Well, oil changes. I change oil every 3 rallies. Similar to the gearbox. Off wheel bearings, washed out, greased. Visual, and if you do see anything that might be broken, and also things that might wear, rose joints, anything like that, you're just taking things off, having a feel, and put it back on again.
Yeah.
And so generally, a good, if we did one rally, we could certainly be more than happy to be out the next weekend and unless you hit a problem.
Yeah.
And something's broken that you weren't aware of, or something like that. But generally speaking, once the car's had a good going through and you're on top of it, you can go pretty much through a season just just routine maintenance.
Yeah, which is pretty good, really, isn't it? Considering the kind of pace
Yeah.
the car's capable of. It's there's an initial high cost, but the running costs aren't. They're not astronomical.
No, these obviously you're going to get big bills every now and again when certain things have to be mended, but generally, general maintenance is pretty okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to put a jacket on.
Yeah. No. Okay. Well,
bear with me a second.
Yeah.
There's a cold draft.
We're about ready to go to the slides, I think.
Yeah, I think we can go back to when I was a lad.
Because the only comments, there's a bit of interference on a cable, I take, but Bruce Chonker says 300 brake. He's never had more than 100, which I thought was quite funny. So if nobody's got any sort of questions on the car and stuff, which put them on Facebook, guys, and myself or Chris will feed them in.
Yeah.
Phil, so, but
anybody out there, chuck a question in. I'll do my best.
Do his best. He certainly will. So, if we can go to sort of slides and stuff, Chris, I think. So
I think you should be okay to go live, to go share screen, Tony.
right. So let me just see. Share screen. It should. Are we going? Is it gone? Hoping so. In a couple
You're
of
there,
seconds.
Tony. You're sharing the screen now.
Yeah, it'll go on to full screen in a second.
In fact, I think this must be proof Phil's got the same registration number on many cars like I have.
Well, you would take some beating, Woody, because I thought you were having a relationship with somebody at DVLA. You were changing it that often at one point. But anyway.
When you think about how long, it's 1987, 88 is that picture.
Yeah, and because you'd done a bit really, Phil, when you started. You didn't go straight into stage rallying, did you?
Oh, how it all began. Well, apart from when I was still in my youth and on two wheels, the four wheels side of things started. Believe it or not, I was actually in the passenger seat. A friend of mine bought a Mini, and we did one or two local road events up round this neck of the woods when I was still only just like 17. And then between us, Mark and myself bought a Road Rally Mark II, which we ran for a year, which was the last year of road rallying. And by that time, I'd started working here. And it ended up, we actually did a stage event at the end of the year called Solway Stages, which was Kirkbride and Great Orton, and they had a road rally class. So you basically ran on, as it was, on road rally tyres, etc. So we did that. And then it wasn't shortly after that rally that Bob Green announced that said car was going to be going up for sale because he wanted to go international.
Yeah.
So it didn't take a lot of process to think that that would be a good, because I'd had a little bit of involvement with it. And so I thought, I'll buy it. So he took me for a run in it, and that was me sold. I bought the car, and the only thing we had to do, which was done here, Dave Metcalf came and did, because there's a BDA in it then, and I wasn't touching a BDA at that. I didn't know what I was doing. So Dave Metcalf came one night and did a head gasket on it, and then after that I was on my own sort of thing. That was the last bit Bob did. So
Because you were quite a young lad at this point, Phil, weren't you? So,
Yeah, I'm talking 18, nearly 19 then.
Yeah.
And I sold my road car. I sold everything I had to buy it, so that I was, and you know, at that age, having a car like that, I was like a dog with a bone, you know. And we started off, Mark and I. We did the Wigton's Championship, which was sponsored by County Motors. I'm looking on that screen there that they sponsored it,
Yeah.
and it was a mixed championship that year. And that picture's Wharton Slag Heaps on a mild and bitter.
Right.
Luckily, it's that side of the car because other side of the car's caved in where I hit a wall. But we did that championship, which was halfway through there was my first visit into a forest, and
Right.
never ever driven on gravel before. It was up in Scotland on a Tweedies Daihatsu, somewhere near Dumfries area, southern Scotland anyway. And we set off into the Forest of Ay, and it was about half a mile to the first corner, and I turned in thinking I was on tarmac. I wondered why we weren't, you know, we were nearly, in inverted commas, wide. And it was a quick learning curve, and by the time we did our own thing and we got to the end, we actually finished 15th overall and first in class.
Yeah, you did.
So we came away quite chuffed with that.
Yeah, first time out.
And
That's quite impressive.
iconically as well that day, it was Colin McRae's very first victory in his career in a
Wow.
Nissan 240 RS with Alison sat with him. So
Well, if
yeah,
you've
that was
done-
quite a memorable day all round, if you like.
Yeah, if you're in the top
And then-
20 and McRae's winning, that's quite impressive.
Yeah, no, we came away and thought, oh well, we might improve on this, and I can't remember much more of the year. I know the Silver Stages was in it, but it did the Crown Wheel and Pinion in Longridge, so that was the end of that. And then other events that were in that championship were like mixed surface, single venues, and then it finished on that Solway Stages again. And there's been results and things popping up on Facebook, and that one actually came up. And the year before, we'd done it in the road rally car and finished about 30 something. And then the following year, we were in this car and we finished 10th. So
Yeah, because
there was an
the only
improvement
other
between
event,
driver and vehicle.
the only other event it lists in EWRC is the Allerdale Stages, which you were 21st in. So
We did. The Allerdale was also called the Peak Revs, and that was in the Lakes Forest. It was a great little rally, very compact, and I did it several times. And I remember one year, and it was still in the early days because we were still after BDA. We were up there in the top 4 or 5 until the last stage. I think we dropped to 6th, but it was such a close day. Everybody was nip and tuck, and it was in the days where Ian Joel was the boy with Nettie. You know, he was winning everywhere at the time in that car, and he was like a good benchmark that, you know, how far off Ian are we? How far, you know, and we kept getting closer and closer as the years went by.
Yeah.
But then when we finished, we did actually do all right with that County Motors Championship, because I remember going to award night and winning something. And then as things developed, I think Kirby were running the leads for Tiles Championship, so we were doing bits of those rounds. And the car didn't like Alton Park. I blew the BDA up twice at Alton Park, virtually in the same place. And the second time, unfortunately, was the end. It just got to a point where it was broken beyond economical repair.
Yeah.
Now, I'm trying to remember, that's the picture on slide now.
Yeah.
That's in Grisdale, is that?
Yeah.
And I would think, because Grisdale stage had just started, I think we would probably be late BDA days or possibly just into Pinto era there. I can't just remember exactly.
Because
I put the Pinto. The Pinto went in 90. The Pinto went in 91.
Right.
After it was the end of 1990 when the the BDA cried enough. And we'd had some good results for a little end. You know, it was a 1700, and we'd had some good results in them first few years, and gained. You know, we started to gain a little bit of help as well, and then we put the Pinto in '91, and things went from, you know, believe it or not, it wasn't the most powerfulest thing, but it was reliable, it drove well. And the actual photograph you're looking at there, that was my very first experience in a forest in the dark.
Yeah.
And it was, they'd linked both stages up together, so it was 18 miler. And we came out of there second quickest to Kevin Ferber, who won it. And that was my first experience in the dark. But again, Grisdale, I'll say I was getting to know, you know, it wasn't the first time in there, so I'd got to know, you know, I've been very fortunate. I've had a good memory for roads. And we were on good pace that day. But even going back them day, we weren't on notes, it was all on maps.
Yeah, and Mike Wolf has asked,
So,
how do you explain your sort of fantastic memory for roads? Because at this point you hadn't done too much. But did you think straight away?
No,
there'd be no DVDs in these days.
No, everything was blind rallying, but because even before rallying as well, I've travelled a lot of these roads and remember places, and I just must have this inner ability to have a good visual memory for things and roads and tracks. Like Mike's asked that question, I can talk to Mike and say, you know, that corner at such and such, and it goes over there and goes round there, and he's goes shaking his head. No, I said, well, it is. It's down there, then round. And, you know, we're talking about a stage somewhere. It could have been in Wales.
Yeah.
And I do have a good memory for roads and particularly stages. But again, we've been over a lot of the ground quite a few times, you know, over the years. So it develops like oh dear. Yeah, I can blame somebody for that.
Yeah, Richard Stevens has said Triggers Broom.
Triggers Broom. Oh, it gets called Triggers Broom a bit. Yeah, it does. Because there is one or two bits, apart from the number plates, there is one or two bits I've managed to determinedly keep from the first original car, which that was its last outing, what you can see now, and that was in Grisdale. And Icy Grisdale was that. When did I reshell it? 93, that is.
Right.
Mick Faller's in the passenger seat. I think Mickey's watching from Spain, by the way.
Yeah.
And we're in the last stage, lying about second, and there was a particular bend which I was quite happy to go around, and Neil Whedon had retired, and I thought, I'm going to go faster because he's watching. And we got round the corner, and it was just about 4 o'clock-ish. The frost was coming out of the ground, and the car just let go, and we just spun completely backwards. And all I can remember was looking out the passenger window, looking at the banking and thinking, as long as we stay parallel to that, everything will be all right. Yeah. But sadly, there was a dog leg in the banking, and the back end hit it, and it just flipped us backwards, end over end. So Neil came and helped me get the car across the road when it landed on its wheels. We got the bonnet up. We got a big lump of tree we found and pulled everything forward enough so the cam belt and everything could go around, and we had a good look round. And then we said, right, let's get this bonnet down, we'll finish. And we did finish the event, but consequently that it was probably the worst 10 mile of mixed rallying, because the car was wrecked. So I just put caution to the wind and just, you know, went as hard as I possibly could. But we got a finish. I can't remember where, but we threw maybe if Neil hadn't been stood on that corner, we might not have crashed. But who knows?
Yeah.
You know, as the old saying goes, you go hard or go home.
Yeah, exactly, Phil. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was then. So that shell. That was the end of the original shell. That. So in '94, out came the XE and Joel spare shell.
Right.
Because he'd moved on to Escort Cosworth and he had a shell there. So the bottom, you've got the original shell there in the top picture, and then you've got the shell I bought off Ian in the bottom picture.
Right.
And that's
Right. Yeah.
the top picture. The top picture is somewhere on a Pirelli in Kielder, and many people will know the corner in the bottom picture. We should maybe throw that to Mike Wolf. Where's that taken, Mike?
Yeah,
And see what he comes back with. I won't say where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by that stage, it was, you know, fully arched, and I guess both of them were four linked and etc.
Yeah, you see, even when you look at the unarched car, Bob Green built that car, and it was all 5 link turreted. You know, it was a Group 4 Escort, just unarched with a baby. You know, it was baby Atlas, 4-speed rocket box, and a 1700 BDA.
Yeah.
And I ran that shell right up to a 2-litre normal aspirated Cosworth before I killed it in '93.
Yeah.
Which everything was transplanted over winter. Oh, you've gone backwards now. That's
No, I've probably got
that. Didn't look like I rolled it that day. I think was that 23. No, I didn't. I finished third that day.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the
Again, Mick, because we experimented that day with 7-inch rims under an unarched car, and we just had to knock out wheel arch lips up so they were clear on the back. But that's on Walk Up Army Ranges on Pendragon.
Yeah, it's a nice shot though. Nice shot.
Yeah. You can actually, I think it's the only rally I've ever worn sunglasses.
Yeah. This is one of the older ones as well, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's the same corner as the headlight. That's the same corner in daylight as the one with the spotlights.
Was it? Right.
Yeah, right. Same corner.
Yeah, that's a nice shot, isn't it?
Sometimes a black and white one do look good.
Yeah, I think so. That's a nice shot.
It might, because it's on. You'll see it's on the second car as well. In my early days, and people who know me well will understand this. My main sponsor was my dad's haulage company,
right?
And because my dad was so enthusiastic and was always 100% behind me, if it wasn't for him in them early days, I wouldn't be sat here now.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I've never been, you know, he helped me loads, both financially and as a spare pair of hands in the workshop at night in them early days, because we had garages back on the farm, we workshops because he had the trucks, and so I had my own garage for the car.
And he'd had no interest in rallying until you.
My dad did. My dad was in Westland. My dad was in Westland Motor Club. He used to get involved in the RAC, Barben Hill Climb. You know, him and my mum, you know, they both were involved. And I'll tell you a little, really little, an old tale here. They were him and some of the lads, and it was like an old, going back to an old comma van. They were going to Marshall in Withup on an RAC. And the lad that was driving decided he knew what he was doing. And where we call Withup Bridge now, there was a bridge. It's gone now. It's just a big open mass, but there was a bridge. And where you come over the crest to go into the bridge, and then it's a tight right out of it, well, he managed to hit the bridge. My dad went out. My dad took windscreen out with his head because he was sat in middle. Oh. And they blocked the stage, and the stage ran late because they were blocking it with this van.
Yeah.
Going back in probably the 60s, going back then. So yeah, my dad had always had an interest, but never any way, shape or form be able to compete. And
had you gone out marshalling with him as a youngster then, Phil, or not?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't really know much about rallying until RAC used to come past school and used to see that, but never really know much about the club route rallying and nationals until I started working here, really, and started showing more interest, because as many of you know, this garage has always been linked with motorsport. Of different shapes and form, but predominantly rallying. You know, going right back to Peter Kirk and Bob and myself. So, and there's been other motorsport interest competitors worked here over the years. So that's where it all really started from.
So you went straight from really an interest through your dad to, well, I think I'll do a bit, and I bought a 1700 BDA.
Yeah, well, you know, we didn't start off with 1300 crossflow. No, the right car was there at the time, and I can remember the first time I drove it was on Kirkbride as a competitor, And again, it was a quote from Dave Metcalf. You're in charge, not the car. You know, show it who's boss from the word go. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
Wise words from a peddler. Yeah.
Mike Wolf
rest
has
his
said,
soul.
I took the photograph off too soon, but he hadn't a clue anyway. But he said, a nice tribute to your dad. And he said he wouldn't have won Fluker if it wasn't for his dad. So
Yeah, well, that's true. Mike is another one where, you know, and, you know, there'll be quite a lot of us there that have got a lot of our dads a lot with motorsport to thank, you know, and
yeah,
now was a good time just to mention, you know, my dad's input was phenomenal in the early days,
yeah, no, it's important.
and which, you know, I've been eternally grateful for. So, but to put Mike at rest, it's at the bottom of Coombe.
Right. Yeah, he'll be kicking himself now, won't he?
Yeah, I thought he might have known that one.
Yeah, he should have known, shouldn't he?
Just down from Duck Pond, Mike.
There you've got the 80s moustache at a nice angle as you come out of this.
Yeah,
Cool. You know, quite a nice photograph.
That's in Hobcarton, that.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess at this stage you're starting to get. Well, this is going back before you reshelled it, isn't it? This.
Yeah, that's back in there. That'll be on a pit. That's either a. I would think that'll be a Allerdale.
Yeah.
If not, it's got to be a very early Malcolm Wilson.
Yeah, because there can't be many people have done more miles on a Malcolm Wilson than you, to be honest. When I look through the records, you've done it most years.
Years. Up until late, it was like every year I've done it. When it went to Kielder, when it used to use Lowther, and then obviously the format using Grisdale. I've done all the formats of Malcolm Wilson since Malcolm started sponsoring it, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you have.
It changed from a Lakeland when it's, you know, I've never. I think I did one. Yeah, that's in Lowther.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a nice shot as well, isn't it?
And if you notice, it is very early on because we haven't. I don't think we've got overalls on yet there.
No, possibly.
You know, they hadn't become mandatory, hadn't overalls. So
possibly a nice blue polo top, but yeah, not overalls.
Yeah, of course, crew neck, you know.
Yeah, lamb's wool. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's a nice photo, isn't it? That even, you know, it's going back a while.
Yeah. Oh, that's another Pendragon one. But I think the photo got ruined.
Yeah, it has a bit. But they're all good days. Now here you're back on the. You've
reshelled cars now.
You've reshelled.
Right. Malcolm Wilson, 1994. That first time out, and I think we did. Well, you'll have the records. I can't remember. We probably did all right. That's
oil pipe retired, 94.
Ah, right. Yeah, an oil pipe.
That's what it says.
I remember an engine mounting braking, but that was on this car.
If it's 94, yeah, you did it. You can't see the car.
Retired then, yeah. I know what it was. Yes, it was in the accident. I must have not seen it, but it was where the oil pipe, the main oil feed, went into the block, and it cracked a fit in there. And I hadn't seen it when I rebuilt it. The pipe basically fell off the block. There's no engine damage done. We survived. It was all right. So.
Matthew Carr says it doesn't know how you can remember all these.
Yeah, no, you're making me think. But that shell was actually a straight true historic shell.
Right.
Even though I wasn't running it as a historic. And no doubt if that shell had still been going now, I'd have probably gone back to historic.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have gone the Millington route. I'd have gone back to a BDG.
Yeah, we'll get to that, I think, because that decision, because obviously you had to make a decision a few years ago, which way do we go?
Yeah.
So, but again, that's another one, sort of similar era, I guess.
See if anybody knows. See if anybody knows where that is. We'll give him a second or two.
Yeah, it's just going onto it now.
Do you two know where it is? Have you got any ideas?
I've not a Scooby.
Well, it's in Lakes.
I'm thinking it's in Grisdale, but I can't be sure.
Wrong surface, Chris, for Grisdale.
Yeah.
It's Horsebox Corner in Coombe.
Right.
So second or third corner, first hairpin down from top when you're coming down. Now that's a bit more modern, that picture, because I think if looking at the picture, I think on the right hand side of the bonnet is like a yellow. Is there some yellow?
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Looks like it. If it is, it's yeah. Well, it was Initiative 2000 out, so it was 2000. Malcolm Wilson. That.
Okay, so that's come on a bit later. Yeah. But
Yeah, we've
nice
moved
shot.
on a little bit there.
now
Now that's not to do with me. That one.
Yeah.
You'd put
Now-
that on for Mr. Worsley, can you?
Well,
Blue car.
this is the first mention, Phil. You know, we couldn't go too long without mentioning it. So that red car was actually
No.
blue at one stage. Or are you denying it?
It was. It was. Yeah, when Bob had it, he used it for anything. And I don't know where that is. It's probably in Cumbria somewhere in the snow. But yes, it was. And I do still have a wing up somewhere, but it was never blue when I had it. And it never will be.
Yeah.
It's just ironic. It's not far off the colour Nigel's painted his car now.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, I mean, it's probably as quick as Nigel's, isn't it?
All steady. He is listening.
He will be, yeah, he'll be.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of questions. One's a bit cheeky, I suppose.
Go on.
Anything else you'd like to have a go at before you get too old? Which is from Mike
Who
Wilson.
said that?
Mike Wilson.
What, any other form of sport?
Yeah, and motorsport.
Not really. I don't think, by the time we've, I've done two, I've had my time on two wheels when I was younger. And
Rallycross.
I've done other. Yeah, rallycross. The trouble with rallycross is they get banked more than they do when you're doing this job.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
And rallycross now, when you watch it, the format of rallycross, don't get me wrong, it's great to watch at the top level, just like World Rally Championship is. But, and I think there is still one or two of these still do rallycross. And some people have even reverted through COVID to going rallycrossing because they're in the car on their own. And the rallycross meetings, last year did run. But yeah. I've never really, that's a fair question, but I've never really given it a thought that would I go to another sport after this? Because I did, and I don't think I would, to be honest, because by the time we run out of places to go and things to do, I think it'll be time to hang the helmet up.
Well, you've got some supportive mates because Joe says it's far too late for that anyway.
Probably. It is because, when you look back, even though it was within the rallying sport, right back in my early days, I'd only had the Escort a year, 18 months. And Jimmy McDermott wanted to buy it off me, and he pestered me for quite some time to buy it off me, and I wouldn't sell it. And one or two people were trying to talk me into going down the one make championship route, which was Peugeot at the time.
Yeah.
And go and see if you can do it, But all I heard about these Peugeots was them falling apart and back beams breaking and, typical French, so to speak.
French stuff, isn't it?
I was very much attached to my Escort and enjoyed.
What about four-wheel drive, Phil? Never fancied four-wheel drive?
Yeah, I have, and I drive four-wheel drive on the road, but again, it's just never been there. Like, it's what Bob did. Bob went from driving this, he went into a front-wheel drive to get onto the international ladder, and then Sapphire Cosworth, well, it was a XR4 before, and then Cosworth came along and he went four-wheel drive. But his heart still was a Mark II because that's what he's ended up back in the garage with now. So people do full circle. But I've never had the opportunity to drive on a rally stage in a four-wheel drive car. So it's an unanswerable question. Yeah, we'd love a go. But I've had another
question in, which I find quite amusing. apparently you're the only bloke in the UK rallying community that's still using an original RS steering wheel. So
I am. It is.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was my
It is a
wolf.
genuine. It is a genuine. Just a genuine RS steering wheel as used by Mr. Vatnan. Just exactly the same. It just
Oh, it's
fits
cool.
perfect
Yeah.
to how I see it.
Yeah, that's quite a nice name to drop in, that, Phil. Yeah, so if it's good enough for Harry, it's good enough for
Well,
Burton,
sort
isn't
of
it?
in my early days, I sort of idolised up to Harry as the flamboyancy and how he drove. I thought, well, you know, that's the way to sort of entertain the people, but try and stop on road.
Yeah,
And in the early Kirby days, they used to have a trophy called the Vatnan Trophy, and it was the fastest man between accidents.
yeah.
And I think, sadly, mine and Bob Green's name on it a few times. It
Yeah,
was either that or the Piston Broke Trophy, but I avoided that. But yeah, they had a trophy purposely for it, you know. So, but yeah, everybody's got their heroes, you know. Roger
yeah.
Clark. No, now you have moved on a lump. Now, just slow down a bit.
Well, I think this is a good photograph because it hasn't called up on Facebook yet, but it sort of brings me into a question, really. I'm just waiting for Facebook to catch up. If you, by this time, this was 1998, and this was the Silver Stages, and you'd been going about 10 years at this point.
Yeah.
In 1998, you had a pretty successful year, really. You hadn't done, had you had any instruction? Had you driving tuition, or it was just all self-taught?
No, it was all self-taught. I've never had an instructor or anybody else tell me I'm doing this wrong, that wrong. I've just honed my own skills myself and use it to the best of my ability, really. And mileage, as they say, which we're short of now, seat time is invaluable. The more time you can spend with the car, and I think driving the same car all the time does make a difference. And it was surprising when you look at the picture you've got up on there. That was like we said, an historic shell with a bolting cage, and was quite, should we say, flexible. And it was surprising when we got into the current car with a welding cage right through to all the suspension and everything, how more of a taut car it was to drive. You know, it wasn't as forgiving in certain ways, and you have to adjust your driving to that. You tend to find that when I went, the flamboyancy of how I used to maybe drive that car, some of it had to be toned down a bit to get more out of this car, because it wasn't, you couldn't get the same feel for like backing it into corners, even though I still do, but you had to adapt it and then learn how to do it again in a way. Like somebody once asked Mick, about the traditional Scandinavian flick, how does he do it? And he says, I don't know. He said, we just turn one way, then we turn other. And I said, pretty much, the bias braking and the car handling does it for you. There's not a great deal of input from me other than steering it and letting the brakes off at the right time to get the front end in, and then back on the throttle.
Yeah. Go on, Phil.
But it's in some ways, going back then in them days there, the 90, that car was built for 94 right through to 2002. That car was actually a joy to drive and easy to drive. And we did sort of like go backwards a bit, but I think the layoff probably didn't help. But considering I hadn't driven a rally car for 2 years, from that car on the photograph to the one I'm sat next to now, I still felt a big difference.
Yeah, and I think
looking at the 10
years, Phil, I mean, you won this event, and on the records, it looks like it's your first outright win, and I might be wrong there, but that's what it looks like.
No, it was. I've never been, because I never stuck at doing grassroots. I went to BTRDA. I never tried to be what people call a big fish in the little pond. I went and did bigger things. So wins were very, very few. There was one, if you go back to 1992, just a couple of weeks before I got married, I went up to Walney Island with this rebuilt Pinto, and I had a car crazy female called Catherine sat with me. She wanted to do a rally, and if I'd listened to her, if I had actually listened to her properly all day, we'd have won that. But I made an overshoot, thinking she was telling me to turn right at a certain place, and I should have gone earlier. And so we did an extra loop to try and make it look not as obvious, but they saw it.
Yeah.
We finished, I think we finished about 11th that day, but we threw away a win there on Walney. And the following, and same in that was 92. 93, we went back with the YB in, and we had another good go, but there was a little bit of, how shall we say, bias towards the locals. And I was deemed to have not gone through a split properly, which I did because there wasn't a split to go through because somebody annihilated it. So again, we were penalised for wrong side of a split, so we didn't win that day either.
Yeah.
So when we did win the silver in '98, it was fitting for more than one reason.
Yeah, because looking at the stats, you know, you were talking about 92. You were 6th on the Malcolm Wilson. You know, if you go to 95, you were 4th overall in the BTRDA and 6th overall on the Quinton.
Yeah.
And yet, when you entered that 10 years down the road of your rallying journey, did you think I should win this event? You know, what was had you got to that stage, you think I should win this?
Well, I'd done one or two silvers. Like actually 93, I was 4th on the Malcolm Wilson.
Yeah.
That was the first time with the YB in as well.
Yeah.
So the results were coming. But when you looked at I can't remember it. I'd been chomping at the bit at the silver stages for a couple of years. And I can't remember if it was a year before or 2 years before. John Thompson had just bought his first Escort Cosworth Group N off John Pye. And I was lying second to him, and he rolled the car in just up the road from where that picture's taken, and he rolled it, but he rolled literally across the road, straight back on his wheels, and just kept going.
Yeah.
But my family was stood on the corner where it all happened, and they were convinced that he'd lost enough time that I'd have won. So they all come jumping up and down. And what's up with you? You've won. Yes, I said, I haven't. I'm second. So I'd been third, I'd been second, and then when we went, we went to 98, and it was, we will say it as it is. You know, Marcus Dodd was there in the Race of Champions World Rally Car, and John Thompson was there with his Group A. There was me, and there was many other good hard chargers that were all capable, but we know nobody's going to get near Marcus in that car, and then John. So really, at the start of the day, if we'd come away with 3rd or 4th, we'd have had a good day. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to the dead end stage, of which, as you can see, I was running at 4 and John was at 2, and I passed John in the ditch, heading out towards that dead end, and so like there's thinking, oh, there's a place, you know. Anyway, we got to the dead end, and Marcus came to me. And bear in mind, I've heard all this before by now. Don't worry about me. I'm here to test tyres. I won't be handing me time cards in. You keep your head down and keep going. Uh-huh. And I'm like, so I took it with a pinch of salt, and we kept going. It was a decent, even though it was damp, but it was a decent day because, believe it or not, there was more grip in Gisborne when it was damp than when it was dry because it was a funny surface. Yeah. And as the day progressed, John was trying hard, and it got to just after dinner, and he came to me, he says, I can't take enough out of you. I'm not going to catch you, you know. And I just did my own thing. And then when I pulled up at Clitheroe Auction Mart and everybody come round me and banging up roof and one thing and another, Marcus had done what he said, and he tore his time cards up. And he said the deserved winners following in because it's a club rally. And so I was thrilled with his sportsmanship, that he did what he said. He got Spirit of the Rally Award for doing it. And we won a rally that we've been trying to win for many years.
Yeah, so and just reward for a lot of effort over 10 years, Phil. So your first outright win.
You know, I'd never really thought of it as that, as like, you know, after 10 years of rallying, that we actually won that.
But you were on the, you finished second on the Pirelli that year, 6th on the Malcolm Wilson. And one of the guys has sort of said, so you sort of knew that you were on the pace nationally, probably lacking a bit of horsepower to compare to other runners. Had you ever thought about international stuff at this point, or were you just content with the national stuff?
No, it was never even in me. I never even gave it a thought to think about doing internationals. And because again, I was just so enthralled in driving an Escort, I didn't want anything else. So, and there was plenty of ambition and plenty of rallies for us to go and do that were bigger events. Meant that I had no reason to change, and it was all within a budget as well of what we could afford. Going back, you know, because even going back then, we'd gained. You can't see properly because it's dirty, but Northern Hydraulic Services were helping me. Driveline at Morecambe were helping me, and I think there was an electrician on the boot. And then again, the rest of it is my dad. But I have also, which it might not be on the car now, but Mike Smith from BDS Fuels, he has actually sponsored me for the whole, one way or another, for virtually the whole of my rallying career.
Yeah.
And more so in the latter years. And again, a guy who, you know, eternally grateful, just like all my sponsors. But Mike has been with me a long, long time.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, this picture is now from 2000, and you had a bit of a quiet spell, you know, family circumstances, etc. But you did a couple of events in 2000. I think this was 10th on Grisdale.
That's Grisdale, is that? Yeah.
Somebody, Dave Gardner said, "What's the best? You know, if you get up to this point, what would you think your best rally you've done?" You might say the Silver Stages, but
actually, no, I wouldn't. No, because to be fair, let's just put the brakes on a little bit. Going back to when you say winning the Silver Stages, but for me, up until then, one of the best results I'd had was that 6th overall in Wales, because I'd never been before.
Yeah.
So to go and be on the pace away from home is, to me, far more valuable than being the king of the castle in your back garden.
Yeah.
So, you know, to me, to be an all-rounder, you've got to be able to go quick wherever you go. Mal and I once had a little, I can't remember when it was, and I don't know if you've got it there, but Mal and I had a little trip up to Scotland and did a rally. I can't even remember what it was called, but we did all right there, and we came away with a result away from home. And apart from Keelders, that's about one of my only trips I'd had up into Scotland.
Yeah. But it must have been nice to win in a red car locally.
Of course.
Yeah. We'll come back to that.
Yeah. But, you know, you've got to remember as well, in those 10 years, and, you know, we were only learning, and we were on a quite a tight budget all the time. And 92, I got married, you know, so things took us, and then, like you say, family commitments came into place.
Yeah.
But, you know, as I've told you, Tony, 98 was a hard year, and to win the silver against all odds of being able to even go rallying, was even more fitting.
Yeah, because you were Kirby Lonsdale champ as well that year.
Yeah, well, that's what the goal was, you see. In 98, we started off at the start of that year. Mick and I had sat down and talked about it, of what we're going to do, and we decided we would do the Kirby Championship, of which everything was going really, really well. We'd gained a lead. Granted, the Pirelli Trophy Rally, which was around, was where I started to have Mal sat in with me.
Yeah.
And then the bombshell of May came with Lorna being taken ill.
Yeah.
So obviously the car basically got chucked in a corner, but I soon found out I had some good friends, and the car got looked after. The local clubs, including yourselves for the silver. If you can get there, there's a place for you. And because we'd done 3 scores, we did, against the odds of Lorna's illness, fit 3 more rallies in the year, and we did win the club championship. So, you know, it can be done, you know, if it was allowed. And luckily, through her treatments, there was little gaps where she was well and I was available. So the car was always prepped by others, and we just went and did what we could, and we did.
Yeah. No, and every credit, Phil. It's not as though you're not doing this for a living. You're doing it because you're enjoying it, and family has got to come into the equation, doesn't it? And
of course we do. Yeah, it's you know, it's got to be, everything's got to be put in perspective, and this is hobby, this is leisure.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate that I was allowed to be able to have completed. Sadly, Mick didn't win it because I'd done that 1 mile rally with Mal, so he came second, but never mind.
Yeah, I've had a question in from another one from Mike Wolf. And I'm sure there's a story behind this, but have you ever thought of converting to a BMW? And I'm sure there's a story. I'm just going to go up the loo while you tell that story.
Yeah. No, I think it's a genuine question, because obviously Mike's rallying his BM, and he's come back, because Mike came out of an Escort 20 odd years ago, a car he regrets selling, but things happen. And he's come back and come in at a good entry level of cost wise with a BM, and you know, credit to him, he's making a good go of it in that car. He's done a lot of development work to it to make it better, but sadly, Mike, no, I won't be converting to a BMW anytime soon.
So while Tony's away, if you didn't have the Escort, what would you really like as a car?
Well, I'm going to contradict what if I was to change surfaces and go as a tarmac driver, even though you need a big pocket, I would love a proper M3 on tarmac. Right. You know, like going back to Bertie Fisher days and that. I think they were a formidable tarmac car. But other than that, I think you would be looking at some of this modern stuff that you can drive nowadays if you could afford it. You know, it's.
Why do you say that, Phil? That it needs a bigger budget for tarmac? What's your rationale behind that?
To buy an M3.
Right. Okay. So, you've never considered building one of the circuit championship type? I mean, they're like special saloons, to be honest. Some of them, they're not rally cars, they're more like racing cars, aren't they? So
yeah, no, I haven't, to be honest, because, and as time's gone on and we get older, we've got to be grateful we can do what we can do.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, because you know, we're all busy lives, we've all got businesses or work to go to, whatever. So you've got to fit everything round. And again, these being reliable workhorses with a lot of big high maintenance, it permits you to do that. Yeah. Because, you know, as in the latter years, which we don't want to jump back and forth too much, but becomes a bigger challenge, to be honest. So
yeah.
But we got to sort of like that crash.
Yeah, and I've jumped forward a couple of years here, so.
Well, yeah, you've gone to 2002. That was a sad end to that car, to be honest.
It is a
because
sad end.
You won't believe, like Mick's in that picture now, but he stood there with broken ribs, and his kidney's not in a good way, which he found out finally on Monday night when he finally went to casualty. But again, he and Joel have built a good car. We survived, but Grisdale bit me again. And we'd had a really good, Mick and I had a really good season through 92 down in Wales. We'd had a good run on the...
Yeah, you had, because you finished 7th on the Quinton, you finished 7th on the Cambrian.
Yeah.
You know, so I think you were going well.
I think we finished 15th on the Woodpecker, which was actually a Mintex round as well then. So you had a lot higher caliber crews out. So that was a good result. So we went to Grisdale on a little bit of a high, thinking we can have a go today. And again, that was stage 2, and we'd gone through stage 1, and everything fine. And then we got into stage 2, and we'd only done. The stage 2 started near the visitor centre, coming up the forest, and if most people know the notorious left-hander that catches everybody out and they go wide into the scenery, if you just come back, there's a bridge, and up from there is where that happened.
Right.
And we came out of the bottom, it's uphill, and it's only a slight medium right over a crest and coming down to the bridge. And I've got it in my head where I wanted. By this time, due to other people, we'd started at 5 and we were running at 2. I wasn't on new tyres because it was end of the season and it was just a bit of fun, but we were trying hard. And we came over the crest on the loose gravel being at the front. The car let go and I could feel it going. I thought, I've just got to keep my foot in here. I've no choice. And when we went into the ditch with the back wheel, there was a big rock and the back wheel just hit that. It spat the back of the car out into the track. The front end, that hit a tree, which is where you can see the damage onto the wing. And then it just barrel rolled into a big roll. There's more damage at the back of the car than the front. We went over several times, of which, I don't remember much of it. I just pulled all the belts, shut my eyes and waited for it all to stop.
Did an accident like that, Phil, did it change your outlook in terms of how you drove, or did you just, what did it mean to you?
Well, no, not really. The only thing it did tell me was that safety was paramount. The reason Mick's was a bit beaten up was the fact that it was a steel tubular seat and it was the tubes that got him.
Yeah.
And when we then built this shell, I was insistent that it had a proper, welding, full cage, going everywhere. And seats were, as good as you could afford rather than skimping on anything like that. And, that's what you've got to look at. Every accident I've had, which fortunately isn't too many, we have climbed out and walked away. Yeah. We went to a party that night, which wasn't a good idea. We were a bit seized up, and when the next morning I couldn't move, I'll be honest.
You're not your usual electric self on the dance floor then.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah, and it was like I felt like I'd done 9 rounds with Mike Tyson next morning.
Yeah.
So it was one of them. But time's a healer, as they say. It did take me 2 years to get back into it, to build this car, and subsequently, I wouldn't say rusty, but it was a baptism as fire when this car came out, because we went over to the Calquick and woke up to 8 inches of snow with no snow tyres. Mm. So first time out in a brand new car, and it was snow all the way.
Yeah, because the following sort of few years, you had, obviously, it took you a couple of years to rebuild the car, etc.
Yeah, it did, Tony. We debuted this car in 2005, and we started on a long run of transmission gremlins. Hence why it was quite barren through. We finished 1 or 2 in 2005. 2006 things were getting a little bit better, but not much. And it went on and on with this gearbox. We kept going to rallies and struggling, and then we had a bit of a run where we were all right. And so by now, Mick had held his hand up and said enough was enough for whatever reasons, what he gave at the time. And he stepped down. This is where Mal came in.
But it's quite unusual to have such a, well, I suppose it isn't. When I look through your career, you've only had 3 or 4 regular co-drivers, which over a long period of time is quite impressive.
Yeah, it is. Mark Reed and I were the first pairing right from me off. And then when Mark got married, Mick came in, and Mick went right through till probably during 2005 or into 2006 before Mick gave over. Mal was available because him and Fritz had a bit of a misdemeanor somewhere, and it was always an agreement that Mal was always Fritz's number one, but it turned out that Mal did 13 years with me, and in that 13 years of Mal being with me, the only rally I did with anybody else was I introduced Tom Woodburn to rallying when he was young. He did Greystoke with me somewhere
Yeah, I
around about.
noticed he'd done he was only a young lad then, wasn't he?
He was, yeah, his mum had to sign a declaration that he could do it.
Yeah.
So, and I think did Tom do it twice with me?
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so, yeah.
Set him on his way to bigger things. To
Well,
greater.
exactly, Phil. Yeah, he obviously learnt a lot from you, clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could tell straight away he was going to be somebody who was going to be good.
Well, that's an interesting thing to say. What did you notice about him?
Just for a young lad he was only 16. He was so calm in the car, and he'd done his homework. Yes, it was Greystoke and it was the same all day, but he treated it as though it was the RAC rally, if you know what I mean. You know, he composed himself in a manner where I think if I needed a navigator and stayed with me, we would have done well together.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, just like he has with everywhere he's gone, he seems to do things right, and he's gone about his professionalism to get to where he has.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. You saw it straight away because, if you go back a few years, back at Clitheroe Club, we've had our dear departed Trevor Roberts, and obviously he got quite a useful young lad in with him, Ian Grinrod, in the early days. And
Yeah,
I always remember Trevor saying, and Grinrod had badgered him, give me a go, give me a go. And Trevor had relented, and he said he knew straight away that the lad was good. And you've sort of said, I don't know where Tom will end up, but you said straight away you knew he was good.
yeah.
It's quite interesting.
I could just sense he was, because as all navigators are different. From Mick went from maps to notes. Mal introduced me to notes on the Pirelli rallies I did with Mal when I was still with Mick, and realised how much faster you could go safer on notes. And then Mal and I progressed as we did, and so did everything else going with it. But with Tom, he was on just basically tulips, and he was still managing to tell me enough. But going back to the good old photographic memory bank, once I've been through a couple of times, he was there for the ride, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's quite interesting to hear a driver's view. I mean, Dave Hopkins, the lad I normally sit in with, said, "Well, you're pretty rubbish, Barty, but I can't get anybody else." so I've done a fair few rallies with him. At 63, I'm not going to get any better, am I? So,
yeah, but I think when you get into sharp end, you need to have some trust in that man sat next to you.
Yeah, you do. So,
yeah. But Mal's delivery of the notes, where he had the ability where his voice would go faster, he could sense the speed, and he could adjust the delivery accordingly. But it was good old fashioned rote note. It was nothing elaborate. It was just to the point. Just enough that what you needed to know.
Yeah.
Whereas other people would say different, where they want to know exactly everything. I just want to know how far and what it is, and that'll do.
What do you use? Is it 1 to 6? 6 fast or slow?
I use 1 to 6 Waldegards. So in other words, 6 is fast and 1's tight.
Yeah.
Which I relate to gearbox in a way, if you like.
Yeah. Personally, I like it the other way around, and Hopkins does. But yeah, it's.
But it's what Mal taught me from the early days, so I've stuck with it.
Yeah, fine, Phil. Yeah.
So there's no point changing it any more than that.
Yeah.
Leaving it as that. So that's what I've always been happy with, and latterly, Dylan, who's in with me now, he's been with drivers where he reads the other way around, and when he reads with me, he reads that way around.
Yeah. No, I've done different ways, and you get into it really. And yeah, so this is a 2010 pick. I don't know. It's obviously the Malcolm Wilson. I can't remember where you finished, but because I want to get through to the big year 2015. So this was 2010. This was 2012, I think.
Yeah, 28. Yeah, 2012 is that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great picture. That was 2012. That's great.
That's Greystoke with Tom Woodburn. As you can see now, one thing I would say at this point, when we came back in 2005, because that's this car that we're sat next to.
Yeah.
I've, gained. Andrew Tennant helped me for a few years, but the main person to talk about now is Westgate Tyres.
Yeah.
Because myself and Graham Bailey, we've had a great partnership over the past 15 years, and another very loyal and great sponsor.
Yeah, and
we all need writing on the cars to keep us rallying.
Certainly do. But this event, you finished 6th. So this was P&R Ben Greystoke says. So you finished 6th. So a good outing. But you a few retirements, all the other rallies that year. And then you sort of had another timeout, really, didn't you? So
yeah,
and
I had to have this is when we're getting towards, because what was that, about 2012?
Yeah, that's 12. Yeah.
Well, we came at the end of 2012, and this is when I had to think about. Well, I think we'd gone down to do a rally in Wales, and I came home demoralised, thinking, Christ, we're nowhere near. I seem to be fighting the car because, we're running like the YB on slide throttle, and as much as everybody loved the noise that slide made, there was no other Escort had a sound like it with the bark of that slide throttle, but we were just hemorrhaging time, and this is when we started thinking about what we had to do.
Yeah.
And so I sort of sidelined at the end of 12 and stripped the car, intending to do a few jobs, and it took me longer than I thought. And then work, there's a lot happened here. So again, time went on.
Yeah.
And it was midway through 14 when the Riger appeared, and it was a conversation at the Star Show about these reconditioned engines that Millington did. And so we sort of backpedaled a bit, and then the October I bought the Millington landed here, and I kindly just had a quick word with Graham Parker, the clerk of the course at Grisdale, for 14. Could I run course car because I want to try my car out? Yeah. And he said, yes, sir, because in them days it's not like it is now with this ruling of 70% and blah blah blah. So we would go and try this new engine and see what we thought and play with this suspension. And I'll be honest, we'd done it. Me and Mal were just looking at each other like, wow, a bit like Vatanen with his T16. Is this thing really this fast, And the difference was just phenomenal. And we could be up a gear in places because we knew the stages, so you knew what to expect. And I remember going through stage 1, which was a little Broughton Moor, and there was a corner at the end. And I said to Mal, I'm going to try it up a gear next time. And it drove it, and so you weren't spinning the wheels, so you're going quicker. And it was a great learning thing, but sadly, we didn't finish as course car.
But had you done all those changes with a goal in mind, Phil? Because
the goal in mind was to come back, which is where you're going now, Tony. We had a goal. We'd heard about this championship for 2015, and there was a place for an open car.
Yeah.
And so we built the car in to the spec that we've got it now.
Yeah.
In mind that we will come back in 15, which is there we are. That's 2015.
15, that one, yeah.
And do this RAC championship. So that's exactly what we turned up at the Red Kite down in South Wales. Woke up to a nice icy morning. So again, very tricky event for the start of after 2 years out of the sport. We come back and decided we would do it. We've been very fortunate that we'd gained a little bit more help from, for example, Les at One Media, Kirby Lonsdale Brewery, and one or two others that helped us on our way. And we then proceeded to do this championship. And at the end of the first event, we won the first round. So that was a good start. And then,
So even after all this time, Phil, this was the first time you thought, I'm going to have a proper go at this national championship.
correct, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because you'd done bits and pieces. Yeah, I'm not decrying that. You had some good results, but
Yeah, because if you think about it, it was 95 when we attacked the BTRDA properly
yeah, exactly.
and
Yeah,
come away with a class win and 4th overall, because obviously two-wheel drives were still competitive then. And so from 95, we'd only done odd bits of things. And the only way to keep the sponsors was to do a championship, TV. You know, this
Yeah.
rally got this championship between Ollie at, he was doing the TV going back then, and the fact it was on motors and everything gave it a lot of exposure. That's one of the reasons we picked it. And there was a category for open cars.
yeah.
Now,
Did you consider going the historic route on the same rallies, or had you really made your mind up a long way back? I'm going to the open.
because this shell was a couple of people said to me, why don't you convert it back to an historic shell? Well, it would have been a lot of work,
Yeah.
because it's got, you know, the cage, some of the cage had to come out. The link boxes are wrong. It's got big link boxes in this because there's no springs. And obviously engine gearbox would have to go regardless of, and the suspension back to build. So there was just too much on the car that we could go historic. It would have to be a forced sale and start again.
Yeah.
And, you know, you better the devil you know in some respects. So we decided, no, we'll stick with what we've got. We've gone for all this lot. We're enjoying it, and we're going to enjoy it. And the year progressed with that 2015, and we ended up in a little bit of I mentioned a 6-tire rule.
Yeah.
We broke a rim on one event, so we sort of had to bend the rules a little bit. Anyway, we got reported to the big chief, and they were coming down on me like a ton of bricks. And I think in some respect it was coming from further. An open car was winning predominantly historic championship, which in some ways wasn't really right. But they couldn't start changing the rules of the championship halfway through a season. But they'd had a good go in one respect, but it was all sorted amicably just in time before we had a trip down to, I had to go and do the Harry Flatters on tarmac, which I was hoping to avoid. But because of the way the scores had panned out, I had to go. So Karen, my wife, and the kids all went on holiday to Tenerife, and I went to Wales.
Well, that's a fair swap.
Yeah, well, that was it was one of these rallies where it was a 2-day event in a way, because you did a recce. So we went down to South Wales on the Friday, and then Saturday, Mal took his car. We did the recce in his car, his road car, and I met Ian Caddy and his navigator. Mal knew from God knows when. So Ian Caddy, being an Eppant veteran, he says, just follow me and I'll, you know. So I followed him right over Eppant, and he was cutting corner. I think, well, there's no need for grass there. Road's 12 foot wide, you know. And there was no real, I didn't really get, and then next thing he clipped a rock and got a puncture, so we left him to it.
Had you changed all suspension, or had you left it on forest?
We left it exactly what it was. All we did was beg, steeled and borrowed some 15-inch wheels, and some tyres, and then we just we dropped it a bit, put some clicks into the suspension. Colin and I went over Barbandale, so that's near enough, and we took it at that.
Yeah.
And Steve Hartness from Pirelli just said to me, bring some 7-inch rims, it's going to rain. I said, right, okay. So he put these Pirelli N3 wets on. He says, you'll need them tomorrow. And we woke up and, wow, God, it were raining.
Yeah.
And I'm not joking, the car never moved all day. Those tyres were amazing. And we finished 9th overall. And we beat Ian Caddy.
Yeah.
And I hadn't driven tarmac hard for 22 years prior to that. But it was one of them days where you had to just keep the car neat and tidy, keep it straight, and everything would be all right. Otherwise, you would just slide off, and it was raining that hard, virtually all day.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it was a fantastic year, really, Phil, wasn't it? So, you know, with you were 6th on the track road, 5th on the flatters, 5th on the Pirelli, 11th on the red kite. I mean, you don't get much better than that, do you? Really?
No, it all went to plan. It couldn't have panned out better. The results kept coming. You know, that year when we did the Pirelli, we won the National B outright.
Yeah.
That's the end of fifth. That's the end of the.
Yeah, that's Grisdale.
That was Grisdale 15. We did an extra event afterwards. Finished 8th overall, first two-wheel drive, and yeah, some photographers just in the right place at the right time.
I mean, that is a great photograph, isn't it?
Yeah, there's only one wheel up floor.
Yeah, it's a superb photograph, that.
Yeah.
How can you remember where you finished? I've got them in front of me and I can't remember them. How do you remember?
Because I looked it up. And it's getting a bit more real. It's getting a bit more close to home now.
Well,
isn't
that's
it,
true. Yeah, that's true.
So,
yeah.
But then you see, so in 15, so that was the end of 15. So then
I mean, that's.
I'm glad you went past that wide one quick then.
Well, yeah, I thought Wordsworth could be in there. We'll go back to it though for Nigel anyway.
Yeah, that was on the track rod at back at Pickering after everything was wrapped up then. We went to the track rod as champions, so we just enjoyed ourselves that day.
Yeah, and that must be a nice feeling. Is that your best, you know, if you look back over what is a long career, Phil, does that come out on top of your sort of rallying memories?
You got to look back and think, you know, we did all right that year. You know,
well, dead right.
Everything went to plan. We didn't really have any. We had one indiscretion. We did end up in one ditch on the mid Wales stages. The one corner they told us about, and I didn't listen. And I hit a bump, and it just got away from me. And I just put front end into a ditch, and we were stuck. So I blocked the stage. Had to stop stage while we got it out.
Yeah.
And then I just drove rest that day with a bent track control arm. So we just tracked it up and made do. But I was very fortunate. I was, one stage I'd never driven until I did that was Meheran and Pikes Peak. And to go up and down Pikes Peak is amazing.
Did you get to the end of that year? I mean, what were your thoughts? Well,
the trouble was I got to the end of 15, and I'd already been told that there was going to be no open class for the RAC Championship the following year, so there was going to be no title to defend. So we then had to look elsewhere. So we went on to the next journey in 16 of doing the BTRDA properly again. Mm. So we set off on that journey in 16 and ended up with meeting a young Welshman that nobody had heard of. That's on the Cambrian in 16.
It is, yeah.
Of which, with Gavin Wynne Edwards and then Boyd Kershaw, the Flying Kiwi. So it panned out that it was going to be one hell of a three-way battle all year. But just before we go any further, there was something prominent that happened. Grisdale 15 was when, after a little bit of debate, that is when we actually named the car.
Right, okay.
It was the end of 15. That's when Lorna Lou came along as the name of the car.
I did wonder where it had come from, to be honest.
Yeah, that's when that happened.
Yeah.
So it was end of 15. So we went into so going back to where we are now, we were into 16 and the Cambrian went okay. I soon realised that we were up against two quick crews. So I was determined that we'll get to the Malcolm Wilson and I'll stamp my authority on my home patch, and was dutifully doing so. And they go and put a little 1 miler in and again slipped into a ditch. So we didn't lose too much time, but again, it pushed us back to finishing third rather than what we should have won that day. And this battle went on all year. Unfortunately for me, we had a bit of an incident on the plains where a bottom arm snapped, and as captured by special stage, we took a visit down a bank and onto its roof, which we had to get fixed fairly quick. So the car had to have a fresh roof and a few panels halfway through that season. And then, so we missed a round because we couldn't get to Carlisle. Well, there was two reasons. We couldn't get to Carlisle because the rally was on the weekend. I only flew in from Barbados back from Rally Barbados on the Friday, so there was no way I could be everywhere. So, and the car wasn't finished either. So we missed Carlisle, but obviously 6 scores. And so we kept going, and Nicky Grist, Woodpecker, and we got to where you're looking at now when we're running the track rod.
Yeah.
And it still wasn't decided, and there was still an outside chance, but the ball was really in Gavin's court. So second was the best we could hope for. Anyway, Boyd went into the first stage and within a mile had put it on its roof. So basically a bit of maths and we could get second, and Gavin was sat there champion. So I flagged him down at the start of Langdale to tell him Boyd's out. So he managed to compose himself that he just realised he'd won the BTRDA and Silver Star, and we were sat there thinking, well, we've just got to finish.
Yeah.
And then Gavin retired at service because his suspension collapsed. So he was lucky in that respect, because otherwise Boyd would have won it, no doubt.
Yeah.
And so we won the event, and we managed to bag second overall.
So how would you look at the 2 years? Yeah, how would you look at the 2 years then, Phil? You'd had, you were outright winner of a national championship in 15.
Yeah.
16 comes so close. You'd finished second, still well. How do you look on those 2 years? You look upon them as
the beauty, the difference between them. Both years gave met a lot of few new faces, made some good friends. There was great camaraderie.
Yeah.
In some respects, in 16, the competition was tight because when you looked at us three at the front, we were exchanging seconds. It was so close all year, every stage. There was never more than a handful of seconds between the three of us. And then there might be one day where somebody might manage to eke out a 30-second win, but it was very rare. And it was just good, hard competition all the time. And then the thing is, we got to the end of 16 and things have to be fixed, and the engine was due. So hence I decided 17 I wasn't going to do a right lot.
Yeah.
And
still ended up fourth on Greystoke.
Well, we're coming on to something now, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Mike Wolfe was going to be away, and he was doing this championship, and Mark Twynham was needing some points. So Mike had said to me, do you think you'll get your engine back and do Greystoke? So I rang Roy up. I said, I need my engine. So he got it done. And so we would do this Greystoke, and obviously I've known Nigel for many years, but we've never actually competed really on an equal playing field. Rallies I've done where he's been on the entry list. He would be in predominantly his Sapphire Cosworth 4-wheel drive. So he was down to do Greystoke in his Mark II. And to be fair, the idea did actually come from him to start with, where we jumped on the red car, blue car. And so we sort of took this as a bit of a gimmick to start with, but it got taken to another level in respect of, the advert came back out, and on the day we had number plates, red car, blue car. We had Milky Ways with us handing them out, and we made a thing of it. And
we'll come to that. We'll come to that. Yeah, I think it's quite a good natured, isn't it? So.
So we did that, and that's the only rally I did in 17. And then we came to 18, that'll be 18, I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
This new championship called Rally 2 appeared, which accommodated open category cars.
Yeah.
So therefore, we would go and do this, and we did this through 18. And Mike Wolf did it as well because he had an open car. So, and again, you were running with historic, so the road conditions were great, and a championship well put together, good events. It was a bit of a mix and match of a championship I maybe felt at the beginning of the year was mine to win.
Yeah.
But rallying being as it is, you never know until you get to the end of the year. And
Did you drive differently? Knowing, people will be looking at you think Burton should win this championship. Did it affect you or not, Phil?
it puts a bit of pressure on you. You've got additional pressure because at the end of the day, we're in a position where you're expected to do well if you can. So you're there doing your best. But the good thing when you went with Rally 2 was it ran alongside the British Historic Championship. So you were putting yourself up against the best two-wheel drive boys in the country.
Yeah, yeah.
And mixing it in with them, you can't find a hotter pace than what there was in that championship.
If you've got Robbo and stuff, I mean, he's as quick as anybody, isn't he? Yeah.
But then you get someone like would jump up as like the list is endless of the historic boys who are constantly quick.
Yeah.
You got Jason,
Nick Elliott,
Josh Price, and then all of a sudden you get like Ocean would jump into a Mark II just for crack and make us all look stupid, and he never drives one, just talent.
Yeah.
But that Rally 2 championship went pretty well, really, and then we went down. We're done. I'm trying to remember. Not Rally North Wales, we did.
And you finished 8th on not Rally North Wales.
Then the Pirelli, was it next?
4th, yeah. Then he got stuck in the ditch on Carlisle. Red Kite, you obviously had an off day. You were 40th.
We'll get to that in a second. Yeah, the ditch, with the Carlisle, which is that picture there, we were actually leading that outright, and it was run at night.
Right.
And it's the same corner that got Banner on the RAC. And we ended up in this ditch, and I was confident it was going to come out, but anyway, it sucked us in. And believe you me, I have never seen and been bitten with midges like it. They were vampires. Unbelievable. When we're trying to get the car out of this ditch. Me and Mal were absolutely eaten to death. It was terrible. And we kept everything zipped up, helmets on, balaclava, and they still got in.
Yeah.
So, it was a bit of a bad day at the office after a good start, was that.
Yeah.
And then, Mal went and conveniently booked a co-driver's course for being Coast Guard the same day as a Red Kite. And he did
indeed, yes.
So I'd met this guy called Dylan Thomas in Barbados while drunk on rum.
As you do.
And he said, if ever there's a chance, I'll sit in with, as it has to be done.
Yeah.
So I rung him up and he said, yeah, I'll be there. So we went and did the Red Kite, and as with Tom Woodburn, Dylan and I gelled pretty good straight out of the box.
Yeah.
And if it hadn't been for the unfortunate of a shocker breaking and an earth strap snapping, which we had to miss a stage, which predominantly then put us right down the order, but we had to get points to keep in the championship. We had a great day, really, and things went really well. And that was the day when we put a set of tyres on the back and we left them on. We missed one stage, but we did a whole rally on one pair of back tyres. But when you looked at them at the end of the day, they were absolutely just shredded. But we did get 40 mile out of back tyres that day.
Yeah, and I mean, good results, Phil. Were you disappointed at the end of the year? What was your overall?
Well, you see, we went again. It was back to the track rod for the last round, and it could have gone any way. It was Mike was in the race, David Hutchinson and myself.
Yeah.
but David Hutchinson was in the driving seat because of my misdemeanor on the Carlisle and then scoring badly on the red kite. So we went to that last round, and then I needed both Mike and David to retire, I think, and then I might have won it. But unfortunately, Mike's had come to engine failure. So David, all he had to do was finish. So he come off the gas and he brought it home to win the championship. And again, I was runner-up yet again in end of 18. And then...
But still a good year, Phil. Still a good year.
It was still a good year. We finished off, it was a decent run on the track rod. We had a bit of engine trouble, right? A slight hiccup with something and nothing, but it just played up in Langdale. It just cost us fourth. I think we finished fifth.
You did finish fifth. I mean, you won Rally 2, but you were fifth overall.
Yeah, but we just finished. We should have been fourth, but we just couldn't quite make it. And then, sadly, in some respects, Mal and I's 13 years came to an end. Mal gave his reasons that it was time for him to step back, and in came Dylan permanently. Of which Dylan did mention that all the rallies that he has done with me, we have run car 12.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's quite amazing. You go thousands of miles to meet, co-driver, isn't it? It's quite. Anyway,
yeah. Across the Atlantic and met me the future co-driver. So we ended up. So we started 19. Rally 2 was going again. And it was a great format, great events. So we went down to do Rally North Wales again, and from there we came away with a decent day. We had some niggles with the car, and a scrutineer. So we came away from there. We fixed what niggles we had, and then we went to the Pirelli.
Yeah.
Which the Pirelli was. Pirelli started well for us. We got away with the Nick Elliott accident. We didn't get stopped like a lot of crews, so we weren't short done. But we got to service and we had a charging problem, the alternator. So we washed it out. But in my wisdom, we can talk about this now because it's history. We strapped the boost pack into the back of the car with cable ties, and just in case, and a pair of side cutters with us. Yeah. And by the time we got to the last stage, which we still, I think, put third quickest time up, we barely had any wipers, we barely had any voltage anyway, and it was fingers crossed it got through the stage. And we literally got back to the A69 and the engine was crying enough. And I just put the boost pack on. Dylan sat it between his legs. I put the boost pack on and drove it through to finish on boost pack with it hidden under a coat so nobody could see it.
And why not?
Finished, I think, we won and we were about fourth or fifth.
Fourth.
Something like that.
Fourth Pirelli, yeah.
Yeah, fourth, I think we were.
Yeah.
And then it was a trip back up to Kielder for Rally Carlisle, which got about 2 corners further than that.
Yeah. And
unfortunately, a double puncture and a trip into the scenery finished us off for a while.
Yeah, and obviously we've just seen the car tonight, which has been put back into the state it was there, but the big accident in between.
It was. It was. We had to jig the front end. It was. We got off lightly considering what we hit, but it did make a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
But as I say, with the help of others and particularly Mike Smith stepping in to help me a bit as well to get it fixed, off it went to be repaired. And as I say, that's how you see it now.
Yeah. And
that because that championship had, all the season had gone then, we move on to this little journey in our careers.
And obviously, a lot of people who are watching probably aware you've been. Nigel's done it a number. Just describe what's the attraction of it, because there's a lot of friendship there. You can see it, and that's a big part of rallying.
What do you
get out of it?
without going on too long, because obviously night's going on, but
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to.
we were on Mull 2014 with Nigel, and it was a somber event, as we leave at that.
Yeah, it was.
And he mentioned something about going to do some of a sunny rally, and there was 4 of us mentioned, and as it got to sort of January time, from the October, we were going to the Autosport show, and Colin, who's in that photograph there with me, we said, "What's happening about this Rally Barbados job then?" "Oh, are you coming?" I said, "Yeah, we want to come." So we went, and the rally didn't go to plan. Unfortunately, we had car issues, but you soon felt so warmly welcomed by the Bajans, and the party atmosphere, the crack away from the car as well as with the cars, compared to the British events, was just another level.
Yeah.
And we were made to feel so welcome. Like the Sunday we went servicing, and Colin and I didn't really know anybody, and we were introduced to the Speed family and a few friends. And by the end of that day, apart from worse for wear, we felt so welcomed and in their part of their family, if you like. And it's just grown and grown, and Facebook's helped.
Yeah.
And then we went back again the next year and did it again. And Colin's been another year since, I haven't. But by the time I've been twice, I was starting to get this, when's that red car coming? When's that red car coming? And
Yeah.
Nigel does have a bit of video trying to catch me out when I just come off catamaran and I was rummed up,
Yeah.
you know, and he's trying to catch me out, and I'm just going, nope, nope. And, but the attraction was there that we should maybe think about this. So we set to and put plans together, Dylan and I, and said, come on, we're going. So I managed to gain, again, some additional sponsorship from local companies around here. And the entry was all in, the holiday was booked, and then along came COVID.
Yeah, I think what shines through that picture is the sort of which a lot of people say is the attraction of rally, and you meet people from all backgrounds, all levels, and you're all equal in rallying, and you know, there's a real friendship there. It's not just about the competing.
Oh yeah, like prior to going there, that's Kevin. The 4th guy is Kevin Flanagan from Ireland in that picture, and it was out there where I met him. Now he's a hard charging, a little mini,
Right.
Of which he was doing it, and he's just somebody else. You know, I've got to know so many different people, both competitors, spectators. Facebook has been marvellous for people who soon find out, and you get to know people. Lindsay and Jonesy, you know, there's to name but a few.
Yeah.
And the organisers as well. So, as I say, we were all set to go, and we ominously transferred everything. And I can't see us getting there this year, but
it might be tricky. But
it is a long shot at the moment. But we'll just hold our breaths for now.
And I've got time's getting on, Phil. But I've got 2 questions left.
Yeah, go on then. Then we'll wrap.
The first one is, why are red cars quicker than blue cars?
Right.
And the second one is, what about the future? So you can answer those whichever order you want.
Red cars and blue cars all depends on what's, you know, we all know about that day where I beat Nigel. Nigel did have his problems, but he was gallant in defeat that day. But, you know, we're all as fast as we are on the day, and sometimes it's the red car and sometimes it'll be a blue car, because we all know there is some very fast guys drive blue cars.
Yeah.
And there's some very fast drive red cars. And at the moment, you know, if we're in the red car, blue car races, it's 1-0 to the red. But Mr. Worswick's now got a blooming another car to play with. So when round 2 will ever be, we don't know. But
well, you need to retire now, Phil. Yeah, played 1-1-1.
But you know, you've got to look at it that between tight and, you know, Nigel and I have throw a lot of banter on Facebook. We're wide and tight and blue and red, and it is all taken very much in good spirit. It's good.
And I think that's
good mates.
One of the attractions of rallying, though, to be honest. It's
and
fun at the end of the day. for 99.9% of us, it's fun. You know, we're not professionals, so
No, we're not professionals. We're just hobbyists. But
yeah,
as for what the future lies, well, we're definitely going to get to Barbados one way or another.
right, good,
I want to go to Belgium
right,
and do some like escort rally special or something of that nature. And as long as I'm fortunate enough to be able to do what I do and to the level I do it, that's what I'll do. And then whether we're, the forest scene is very much a delicate subject at the moment. We hope that common sense prevails and we can go back playing in the forests. But we have to wait and see, and let's get out of this pandemic.
yeah, I quite agree, Phil. Yeah, so looking back over your career, you've had some difficult points. You've had a lot of success in a number of years.
Yeah.
Would you change anything?
I don't think I'd want to, Tony.
No.
I've enjoyed everything I've done, even when it's been a bad day. I've been very fortunate over the years with sponsors, which we can't do without, and it's very difficult in this day and age, to keep the sponsors and keep them happy. But because of one of my sponsors been immense tonight, putting all this together for me, and the effort the other night between them both with the One Media guys, is that you put everything out there. You use social media, you use the platforms without trying to sell it as a product, but you've got to really, really try and sell yourself and put yourself out there as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, I must admit, Phil, and I've never spoken to you till the last couple of weeks, but I've been quite impressed by what you put into it, and you want to give value to people. And,
well, just in what I've just said is like how we've tried our best to do tonight.
Yeah.
We haven't done it. I'm very fortunate to have these guys on the doorstep who wanted to help, so we would do it in a way where we could do something different.
Yeah. No,
And I hope it's come across that way, and people have enjoyed what I've said. Hopefully.
Well, I think we've had quite very healthy viewing records numbers over the course of the night, Phil, and I think on behalf of Clitheroe District Motor Club, I think you've put yourself in a very, very good light. You've projected yourself well, and thanks to Les and Paul in the background, and I think it's been a top night. So on behalf of the club, I can only thank you for what you put into it, and you put a lot into it, and it's the first that we've done from a workshop, so hopefully it's not going to be the last, and if you have a really good year and 18 months, well, hopefully you'll come back and tell us all about it. But thanks very much, Phil, and good luck for the future.
It's been a pleasure. We discussed it a few weeks back. We said we would do it, and we didn't quite tell you everything we were going to do till the last minute tonight, obviously. But from our side, thanks for everybody for tuning in and watching. It's been a pleasure to sit here for a couple of hours, and we may not have covered everything accurately, but it's been an enjoyable evening for us as well.
Yeah, time for a rum, Phil.
Yeah, time for a rum when I get home.
Time for a nightcap.
Yeah, we've probably had half a bottle by now.
So I look forward to the red v blue contest in the coming months.
Yeah, whenever that may be. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, so well, thank you very much, guys, and top notch.
No problem. Good night.
Yeah.
Thanks,
good night,
Phil.
folks.
All the best. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Chris.
Cheers.